Hi, I'm Jamie, and in this show, we talk about everything outdoors in the Pacific Northwest. Life and fishing, health and hiking, relationships with others, the outdoors, and with ourselves. Join us for epic catches, new fishing techniques, and insights on ways to create your next wild adventure. For us, fishing is more than just a hobby. It's a way of life. Welcome to the Fishing for a Reason podcast. Welcome to the Fishing for a Reason podcast. I've got John Beath on the line here. And if you are watching us on YouTube, if you're listening on audio, you're going to have a great experience, but you're probably going to want to click the YouTube link below the show notes here because he's fishing right now. You see his buddy in the background running the downrigger. And when a fish gets on, he's probably going to disappear out of the video for a minute, but we're going to watch.
I'll turn the camera around. Yeah, right now we're using bait because the last couple of days, they haven't been keyed in so much on my lures that I make, and I use what works. And if my lures aren't working one day, I'll use bait. But we've been using bait the last couple of days and getting fish. If they're finicky and they want bait, I'm going to give them bait. They've been feeding on sardines. So there's no sardines to buy around here. So we're using anchovies and herring, but we are using my flashers. And the one that I'm using is my Black Beauty. And my Black Beauty has a big old eye on it. And it's, instead of being an 11-inch flasher, it's a 10-inch flasher. And they really seem to like it. Some of the guides are using it in Seattle and doing real well with it. So, you know, I'm going to continue using it. And what flasher do you have on, Robert? Oh, he's got the Glow Mermaid tail with a big old eyeball on it.
Also a 10-inch?
Yeah, a 10-inch. And the 10-inch weighs less, and it has a little different kick than the rest of the flashers. So it's a good flasher to use. Another one that we use is the metal flasher. And this also has an eye on both ends and glow on the back. This is an 11-inch instead of a 12, and it's roughly an ounce less than a typical metal flasher, and that gives a totally different kick as well. So we've got something that not everybody else has as far as when we're fishing the waters, except the guys that buy the stuff at Swain's. You know, a few of the stores have my gear: Swain's, Holiday Market, Harbor Marine, LFS in Bellingham, Jerry's Bait and Tackle, etc. So
if guys want to try out your stuff, can you tell us a little bit about your company, the name, what inspired you to start it?
yeah, SquidPro Tackle is the name, but we have squidlures.com. We've got halibut.net. We've got about 30 websites, but I used to be pro staff for a couple pretty big tackle companies, and one of them would fly me out to their place, and I would just sit down with all the team and discuss with them what we need in the Northwest, because we weren't getting it. And I helped them figure out what they should be doing, and I wasn't getting much out of it. So I decided, well, I'm going to start with this product. I'm going to go to that product. And pretty soon, you know, I spent $100,000 in development costs to get molds done. And that's how I started the company in 1999.
And did you specifically start with halibut when you started with molds and everything, or did you, and why halibut?
Well, that's an interesting story. I was an outdoor writer, and I had a magazine column, a newspaper column, and a guy that I really respected, great guy, Doug Olander. He was a Edmond school teacher, but he was a very prolific writer in the magazines, and he really focused on halibut and bottomfish. And he decided to take a job with IGFA in Florida. And when he left, I told him, I said, Doug, I'm going to fill your shoes. I'm going to be that guy. And I had already halibut fished and bottom fished. And so I started doing seminars at the Seattle Boat Show, and I did those for 19 years. And I started developing my own techniques, my own tackle, and looking at it through a scientific eye and digging up as much research as I can. And I hooked up with Chris Batten, who wrote How to Catch Trophy Halibut. He and we went all over, and we decided to come up with an underwater video. And we spent about $40,000 in 4 years. And we were in a race with Charlie White, who was a friend. Well, he's now deceased. Great guy. He came up with that first underwater video, and he was in Victoria. Well, he was in a race with us to get underwater footage of a halibut biting a lure. Well, we won that race, and we had some proprietary equipment. This is long before GoPros, and we caught in real time. Wow, there's a halibut biting my lure, and I don't feel a thing. So we created this video, sold thousands of copies of it, and that also helped me to figure out, some things that I could do with my tackle because of the way the fish reacted. And one of the things that I learned while watching these halibut underwater, when you're drifting along, they always have their nose into the current. So after your gear is past them, they lift up off the bottom, they come up and attack it from the back. That's when you're drifting. When you're anchoring, you're bringing them into you. So it was quite the experiment, a lot of fun to play around with underwater equipment. And, this is so much before GoPros. Now anybody can do it, but it was a lot of fun at the time watching lingcod and rockfish and halibut and even seabirds sometimes coming up. And watching halibut take the ball instead of the bait. Take the ball
really?
out, spitting it out. Those bites you get, and all of a sudden you bring your gear up. Oh, it doesn't look like anything touched it. Well, yeah, they hit the lead because they'll hit anything. I even had them. I had this clip, and I had a breakaway from my camera, and we looked at the footage later. We had over 100 hits in 5 minutes because we were in a school of chickens. They were hitting the black clip because it was shaking like this with the current and the line. It was just making it shake, and they were hitting it repeatedly. I thought that was kind of interesting. So a little bit of action can go a long ways. And black is, by the way, a great color for halibut or root beer.
So with all of that footage and you watching it and learning, what did you take from that and actually translate into your gear, and why?
Well, one thing I did is I turned my skirts upside down, because a skirt typically is designed to troll, right? Well, when you have the hook down here, the skirt gets in the way of the bait. I turned it upside down. Now look at the action. It looks more alive. So I turned a static bait into an active bait, and it gets that completely out of the way. Plus, it enables us to put a scent tube. So you put a sponge in there, and you can put your favorite scent, and it drips over your bait and creates a scent field. So that was one thing that I created after watching the underwater video, and it's worked out pretty well, except for the customers that call and say, this was a mistake. It was made upside down. And they take it back to the store, or they call us and we say, no, it's that way on purpose.
I love that. So what color do you throw in the water? You're going to go halibut fishing for this August opener. What are you going to put in the water?
I'm going to put in the water. Oh, geez. I'll have the pink skirt that I just showed you. I'll also have, let's see here, a double rig. So the main line goes here, and there's a little Z2. Notice the hook is down past the tentacles, and then it goes to another one. So I'll have two hooks instead of one, and that way I can vary the baits. With this rig, I can put one bait on top and one bait on the bottom. I can see if they're sticking to the bottom because of currents. I can see if they're coming up off the bottom. I can see which bait they prefer, and it gives me a big clue on what I should be doing for the rest of the day and what the fish are really keying in on. And at the bottom of this, of course, is a corkscrew swivel. You put your lead here, and this is how it looks in the water.
Love that. I love the strategy of using two different baits to see what they're actually doing.
Well,
So will you run one, or will you run both of your, or both rods with that first and then?
Sometimes, but I'll vary it up. I also have my spreader bars. And by the way, I'm the one that created the tubing over the spreader bar, and I filed for a patent on that. There's other people doing it now, but I'm the one that started that with UV tubing or glow tubing, which just helps the visibility because we're trying to attract halibut from a greater distance. And it's a great way to fish. But I'll put one of these down. If I'm using a spreader bar, I'll either put the octo on there, or sometimes I'll put a squiddy squid or a Z2 or a fat squid with a J hook. Sometimes the fish are biting a little bit finicky and you got to set the hook. And that would be the time that you use a J hook. Or if you've got a heavy current, you might want to put a squiddy squid with 2 hooks out here, and then it's doing this in the current, and they'll come up and hammer it pretty hard. So some of my techniques. And then let's see here. Here's another color that is a go-to color. Got stuck in the steering wheel. I got to steer around boats too.
Nothing like a little multitasking.
Low white, and the way this works, there's where the lead goes on that corkscrew, and you hit bottom, bring it up 2 to 4 feet. If they're really hugging the bottom, you want to keep it a little bit closer, but keep in mind it's gonna fall toward the bottom. Fish on.
Oh, fish on. Okay, I'm gonna talk while you guys catch a fish.
All right. Can you see?
Yep.
Oh, it's a nice one. I'm gonna bring the other gear up.
Sounds good. So we're on the line here with John Beath, and if you are listening to the audio, you're gonna have to go check the YouTube out because he's showing us a lot of really great stuff. I personally fish John's stuff. I love his gear, love the rods, but right now he's got a fish on. So we're gonna sit here and watch these guys land this fish. And this episode is coming out a little bit later than we're actually recording. So we're got the net out, getting ready. And you can see John ran out. He got the gear out of the way, which is always a really good tactic. If you got a fish on, get the gear out of the way, especially if it's a nice fish, just to make sure nothing goes wrong and they get tangled. Survey says, is it keeper? Oh, he's bringing in the boat. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Nice work. That is awesome. Check out that fish. Just a little podcast fishing. No big deal.
Yeah. We caught one.
Good work, guys.
For me, will you? Okay, I'm fine.
Now, this is another level of multitasking.
Oh, I got bloody decks now.
Yeah, you did.
That's a good quality problem to have.
Yeah, I'm trolling on my main because it's quieter. I have a brand new Mercury 300. I had to get that because my Honda, the guy that had the boat before me, ignored a recall notice.
Oh, no.
And it was for a power head, roughly $8,000, and not good. So I could have repaired or get this brand new motor. I chose the brand new motor.
Sounds like it's working out for you.
Great motor. At 4,000 RPM, I'm getting 3 miles per gallon doing 33 miles an hour.
Wow, that's really good.
That's really, really good.
Yeah. So where were you out before you did the repower on fuel?
I was going 20 miles an hour, and I was probably going 2.5 miles per gallon. So I've really got it dialed in right now. And most boat owners don't know their fuel consumption. So the thing to do, if you want to know your fuel consumption, is you get a flow scan or something like that. Mercury has it on their gauge now, or you can add it to your NEMA system and it'll go into your Lowrance or it'll go into your Garmin. But what you want to do is you want to get out on a flat day and run at get up on plane speed and write down, have somebody there to write it down as you're calling it out. Okay, I'm doing 3,000 RPM and I'm burning 7 gallons an hour. Okay, and then just go through that every couple hundred RPM, and then you go back and you do the math. And when you do the math, it's shocking because people don't really know what their sweet spot is unless you do that. They think it's one thing, but it probably isn't. So once you do the math, you know that, okay, in my circumstance, if I go 3,600 or 4,000, that's my peak efficiency. So I've got 2 ranges there for different conditions. And I know if I drop down a little bit more, it drops a little bit, but it's still very efficient. But at least now I know how to go the farthest on a tank of gas and, get there fairly quickly. Anyway, awesome. I went off topic. Sorry. And there's
I love it. Actually, the other question I have, because guys are doing repowers all the time. How was that process for you? And do you have any recommendations for places to go if somebody's considering doing it, or tips?
Yeah, ask around. Repowers right now, number one, I looked into this. The number 1 repower is a Yamaha. Number 2 repower is a Mercury. Honda's way down the list right now. Suzuki's number 3. And you can't really go wrong with any of the companies. I went with Merc because it was 92 pounds lighter than my Honda 225. Wow. And I got 75 horsepower more. So that's why I went with Merc. If you go to Canada, everybody's got a Merc now that's repowering. If you go to the Columbia, that's what everybody's running. And it's because they spent millions and millions and billions of dollars on technology, and they're really leading right now. And I wasn't a Merc guy at all. I've had Mercs before, but all of my research, and it was a lot of research, kept leading back to Mercury was the best answer for me. So that's what I did. But
well, you seem happy with it. So
look around and talk to your local Mercury dealer. Dave, I think his name's Dave Johnson over at Kitsap Marine. He's a dealer. He also likes Suzuki's a lot, but look around, talk to your buddies, ask people that have Mercs. I know Dr. Ramos, he's also got Mercuries. He tried the Yamahas, didn't work out. He loves them. So everybody I know that has the Mercury right now is loving it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that tip. And you know what? We're focusing on halibut, but you are salmon fishing right now. So can you give guys at least an update? Right now it's August 6th. This will come out later than that. But how's it been out there? And is it worth guys going out and trying in your area?
Oh, it's just terrible. It's been an okay year. The fish are bigger this year. I got a 17 pounder a couple of days ago. I didn't get out yesterday because it was a little bit rougher than today. And it's been worth it. A lot of native fish, so it comes in spurts where you'll get hatchery fish, and then all of a sudden it's a bunch of natives. And there have been some really big natives. I know of some 40s, a bunch of 30s. We have friends that have gotten them in the 20s.
Wow.
Surprisingly, the jiggers are doing the best on big fish because they're fishing in close to the kelp bed, and by and large, they get bigger fish. So if you want bigger fish, learn how to jig, and there is an art to it, and it's not that big, huge swing, especially when you're fishing shallow. It's a very gentle touch, and you got to be able to set the hook. You got to be able to keep your line tight and that hook embedded, and it's an art form. But I've got a buddy who makes Dungeness stingers, and him and his twin brother are absolutely the best jiggers out there, period. There's no competition. Those guys are the very best. And I'm happy to be friends with them. I'm trying to learn how to do it better, but I've got a shoulder that doesn't like jigging for more than a few minutes.
That was my question. I noticed you're trolling. So what your preference was? Would you jig if you didn't have the shoulder issue?
I'd probably still troll. I love trolling. I love waiting for that to snap off the downrigger. My true passion is king salmon. And I kind of gave you a teaser if you read your email, but my funnest experience and what got me hooked, my dad took me on a charter with a guy named Dwight Clifford from Edmonds Marina in 1968 when I was 8 years old. And we went over to No Point, And that was at a time before downriggers. We had the breakaway, the little thing where it pulls and the sinker drops. And I was using a flasher and a fly. And I was up on the rod and I caught this 23-pound salmon that every guy on the boat, oh, I can help you. I can help you. And my dad kept saying, leave him alone, leave him alone. And I caught that salmon. And that was the best salmon in my life because it hooked me for good. Now I have an addiction to salmon fishing and fishing in general. So that was my favorite ever salmon, even over the world record, one that I caught.
Tell me the story of the world record.
Well, I was running Rivers Inlet Resort. I was a manager for 6 years, starting in 2000 until 2006. And I wanted to promote the area and promote the lodge. And I thought, well, what better way than to try and get a world record and get some press out there. The year that, I think it was the year before I took over, there was a guy that caught the world record hatchery Chinook that was 81 pounds.
Wow.
Hatchery, thin clip. So I got a picture of that and it went all over the world. It went across the AP wire service. It went into documentaries. I mean, that photo was incredible. So that's how I became friends with the lodge owner, because I took the picture when they got back into the US. And the lodge owner thought that was pretty cool. I got him so much press, and that's how I got hooked up with him fishing Rivers Inlet. And then he decided to make me manager because he married a much younger gal and had a couple of kids. And so I was managing the resort and decided I'm going to try fishing for the biggest king ever on 6-pound test. And I got Berkeley as a sponsor. Islander Reels was a sponsor. So I'm using Islanders, and I've got 2,000 yards of what I thought was 6-pound test, which was in reality 4.2, that put me in the 6-pound category. That's the way IGFA is. So I handicapped myself by 25%. And the year that I caught it, I had a couple of buddies with me. I had my own boat up there at the lodge. And I hooked this fish. I told them both to sit down. And I stood on the motor well of my 17-foot Olympic. And I fought that fish for 55 minutes and boated it. It was 51 1/4. And that was pretty exciting, especially when my buddy missed the first net.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, but we ended up getting it and it got certified and it still holds. So I caught that in 2004.
How awesome is that? And so out of curiosity, a fish that big, you said wasn't your favorite fishing memory. What's the difference between those two stories for you?
What got me hooked? And that's as a kid, it was more impressionable to catch that big king and have that excitement for the very first time. It's kind of like your first kiss.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the way to equate it.
Because there's a lot of people that listen that aren't necessarily seasoned anglers. Maybe they're considering it. Do you have any advice for people that are considering giving it a try, but maybe are a little overwhelmed by the whole process?
Yeah, my buddy, he just stole my punchline. I was going to say, and my first kiss was that first fish. So I've got duality there. But if you get people excited about fishing, you know, the way to do it is to get them out, get them on the rod. Don't take the rod away from them if they're doing something wrong. Let them make some mistakes. You can coach them, but especially with kids. Kids absolutely love it. But I see people out here all the time taking the rod away from their wife or girlfriend or kid because they can't quite get it to the net. Let them work on it. You know, just spend a little bit more time because it's so impressionable. One of my favorite halibut memories, I took my daughter to Ucluelet fishing out of my boat, and she caught this chicken halibut. It was her very first, and I got this adorable picture of, you know, my little 12 or 13-year-old daughter with this fish, and I used to show it in my seminars all the time. And I would say it's not the size that matters, it's the memory that matters. And for me, that's one of the most memorable halibut.
Fish on.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
We're just going to watch these guys limit out. And just like John said, it's not the size that matters. It's the memories that matter. It's the people that matter. But yeah, he's bringing in the gear quick. You can see, get the stuff out of the way, especially if it's a little rough and you're on a podcast.
Driving the boat.
Driving the boat.
Trying to keep everything out of the way.
And this is a really good example. As you can see, he turns the boat to keep the fish on the side of the boat that he wants. You guys are going to have to go check out the YouTube video. This is a very difficult experience to share over audio. This is definitely one to watch.
It's rough out here. All right, we're almost ready to nap.
Flounder out of the way.
We'll get him.
Got the fin of freedom.
The fin of freedom. Dang it. I can't keep it.
Don't put them in the net. We got the hook out.
And I had somebody the other day ask me, how do you tell if one is wild? De-hooker. The adipose fin is what you're looking for. So if it has that adipose fin, you can see John put the net away. He got the de-hooker out and he's just going to release that fish so it can go off and do its thing.
All right. All right.
Mission accomplished. Nice work, team.
Rebait mine, it needs to be rebaited.
Yeah, go get him.
Okay, you got to let us know what you're using. You said you run bait behind a flasher. How do you rig your bait?
I've just got them on heads right now because it's so rough. I can't do my lacing the herring up, and you need a head with a sardine anyway. Got into 60 feet of water, but not bad. We had 2 fish to the boat. That was about a 12-pound native. Where were we? The halibut with my daughter. That's still a picture I absolutely adore. And my daughter was just here a couple weeks ago visiting. I got to spend 10 days with her and my granddaughter, and that was fun.
Did you guys do some fishing?
No, she was. They were both competing at the World Ninja competition in LA. So that was fun. But when I went out fishing with her a couple of years ago in Australia, my daughter outfished the whole boat. Jigging.
What were you guys targeting?
Just bottom fish, snappers, and different little fish that I have no idea what they are. But, you know, it's funny. As a guide, too, I love women on the boat because they listen. They have no preconceived idea, and they jig a little softer, and they tend to do a little bit better. So the guys could take a lesson from the women and the children in their life.
Love that.
Pay attention, listen. I once had this teenage girl and her whole family on my boat in Alaska, and she had never fished, and her brother had fished with me 3 times. And I told her what to do, and she slayed it. It was incredible how many fish she caught on the jig, because she had a little bit softer jig action. And when the fish hit, she wasn't too excited about, you know, I got to get it in right now. And her brother was so frustrated. And I kept telling him, just relax, slow down a little bit. But he was just a little too hyper, and she was just real calm about it. And she outfished her parents and her 2 siblings.
Love that. So can you give us a little bit of background of your guiding experience? How long have you done it for? How'd you get started in that world?
I've had my Coast Guard license since 1986, and I did some fill-in guiding in the San Juans, and I finally, when I retired, I decided, hey, I need a retirement job. So I went to Alaska and guided in Southeast for 11 years. And I've guided here locally for the last 3. I can only guide halibut. I can't guide salmon because I don't have that expensive permit. As
Are you doing charters for halibut this coming
Yeah.
opener?
Yeah, I've already started taking bookings when it opens up August 16th. I've got August 16th. I've got a charter from some out of towners and I've got some charters. I'm going out of CQ into the ocean and then I'll be back here in PA and I'll either be fishing around here. There's quite a few halibut that have moved in. We were trolling, when was it? Saturday, yeah, or was it Friday? Days run together, but we hooked a halibut. And I guess it was Saturday. We hooked a halibut and we were right where I am right now in about 110 feet. And we thought, what is this? It's not running, but it's pretty heavy. Well, it was about a 15, 20 pound halibut. And a buddy of mine the day before had a halibut. So there's some halibut around. And the dogfish appear to have moved on because we haven't seen a dogfish using bait last 3 times out. So that's good news. But I'm going to either fish real close or I'm going to run down to Pillar Point because Pillar Point typically has pretty good halibut fishery in late August, mid-August to September. And it was really good last year.
Can you tell us a little bit about the difference with the summer fishery? Do you change any of your strategies when you go halibut fishing, or is it just the same program?
Same program. If I anchor, the key to anchoring is putting chum out. And you got to think of it kind of like shrimping. You're trying to attract them to you. And no, I don't put the chum line up on the anchor line. I put it on a downrigger right in the stern. And I position it depending on the current. You know, I move the arm around a little bit. But I have really good chum. And it's basically the same that I'm using for shrimp, only a little bit thicker. And I put it down there. Sometimes I'll add a salmon head or something like that, but get it down there, bring it up 10 feet from the bottom, and then every half hour hit bottom and bring it up because, you know, that stirs it up and that's more of the scent line going. So what you're trying to do is get a scent line down current. And the International Pacific Halibut Commission has done studies years ago where they concluded that halibut will come in from 1 mile to a scent field.
Wow.
1 mile. So when you anchor up, you're essentially fishing down current a mile. That's why it is rude to get behind somebody's slick. And I've had that happen a lot this year. You know, I'm anchored up, somebody gets right behind me 200 yards. They think that's far enough away. Well, they just killed me. You know, and all of a sudden, this one day, somebody did that to me. And I'd invested an hour already, and then they showed up, and all of a sudden they started catching fish. Well, those fish were headed to me, and that's a guarantee.
Yeah, but he was your friend.
Yeah, and he was my friend. I had words with him later.
Are you still friends?
He just rolled by, but that will never happen again with him. But it happens with people you don't know all the time, and a lot of times they know what they're doing. A lot of times they don't know what they're doing, but you want to get offset. And you got to see, okay, what direction is that current? But there's a term for that. It's called corking. So anyway, if I'm drifting, you just got to drift the best areas that you can. If I go to Pillar out there in the deep, I'm not going to be anchoring. I'm going to be drifting. And that enables you to cover a little bit of ground. So the majority of the time early in the season, I'm anchoring. Later in the season, I'm doing a lot of drifting. And if I go to the ocean, I'm drifting. So the ocean fishery is going to be off the hook as well. It really is. And ocean fishing, a lot of it is fishing with pipe jigs. So with pipe jigs, we happen to make something that is really, really cool. It's the bonus hook. Got to untangle it here. My wife makes all of this stuff. No, my wife doesn't fish, but she makes all of this tackle. And
how did she get into that?
when she retired, that's her job. And then at the end of this is where your pipe jig goes. So your pipe jig can only have one hook. If you have two hooks on your pipe jig, you cannot do this. You cannot have more than two hooks when you're fishing for halibut or salmon. So keep that in mind. I see a lot of guys break that rule. You can't, you'll get a ticket. But this is a J hook. Put a little bait on there. You got your pipe jig down here. Sometimes you come up with two halibut. Sometimes you get a lingcod on this top hook or a lingcod on the bottom, but that's a really good way to get halibut when you've got a pipe jig. Something else that we use a lot of, I'm looking through my stuff here, always use. My little diamond light. It's in a little bag now to keep the moisture out. I put lights on everything. So I'm trying to use scent. I'm trying to use sound, which is vibration. Halibut can hear sound from a long ways, and sound travels 11 times farther underwater, and it's 5 times as loud.
There it is. We use those too. I think you sent me a couple.
And then there's another light in there that is one of my first products. It's called a trophy torch. Takes a AA battery. You find that over there. I don't have a battery in it right now, but
Awesome.
and this thing will go down to 600 feet as long as you tighten it up. But having lights really does help, and banging the bottom occasionally with your gear, sends out that sound vibration. The other thing I'll do when I have a spreader bar is I'll take an old salmon spoon or two and put it on there, and it makes this noise underwater, and it attracts them again, and it will also duplicate what a crab does with his pinchers feeding. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get them attracted to what I'm doing, with sound, with scent, vibration, with light, and it really does help trigger that bite. So make everything work for you if you can.
Awesome advice. And I'd love to know, what weight do you typically use on your pipe jigs when you're fishing loose pipe jigs?
Whatever will get me down.
Whatever will get you down. So do you have a few on the boat with different sizes typically?
Yeah. 2 pounders, 3 pounders. And the funny thing is, most of the people I take to the ocean on charter, they don't want a pipe jig. They've been with boats that forced them to only do pipe jigs, and it can be brutal and very tiring. So I take out a little bit older clientele, and they typically will pipe jig a little bit, and then they want to use bait. And bait works. My bait rigs work really, really well out there. But if you can get them on a pipe,
it's so fun.
It's so fun, but you gotta have some muscle there, and you gotta be willing to put in the physical effort. But we're also using electric reels now and batteries so that you can move around the boat, not be tied to a cord. That was something Jason Norlander, Outlander Charters, he turned me on to the batteries that hook right up to the rod. And guys like him and Todd Gertz, Extreme Fishing, those guys are the best out there. There's no better than those two guys. They are absolutely incredible. And they go way, way far offshore. I'm not going that far offshore to get those big lingcod. My boat's a little bit smaller, but if you really want to have a trip where you go out way deep and do some heavy pipe jigging, those guys are the guys.
Yeah. So you said they're the best ever. These two guys, they're absolutely the best. In your opinion, what makes them different?
Well, Todd will fish all day. He won't quit until he's got them, and he will go out. He will find new areas. He's got his spots. Other guys try to find those spots. He is relentless, and he is absolutely amazing at it. And Jason, same thing. He will go out. He'll find new spots. He'll experiment. It's not a matter of going to the same spot. And something Jason does that I think is really funny, he has a Faraday bag. Do you know what a Faraday bag is?
Mm-mm.
Faraday bag is something that blocks all electronic.
Oh, yeah. I have heard of those.
So he will ask his clients, hey, do you want to catch the biggest lingcod of your life? Yeah. Okay, well, then everybody bring out your cell phones, and he puts them in the Faraday bag because so many people want to try and get his spots. And that's what you have to do to protect your spots out there.
Oh, funny.
You take a picture of somebody with a current cell phone, it gives you GPS data.
Sure does.
So that picture, you can go back and know exactly where you were and then take your own boat there. Well, that's not fair to the guy that put in all the work to go to that spot and learn that spot. So it's like me around here. Everybody can see where my boat's anchored up. And all of a sudden I got 10 boats around me. Well, you know, I spent time working. You got one? You got one?
So,
Okay, well, I'm gonna
go.
All right. Well, I've got a line of kelp here. I'm gonna have to get around or keep yours up, and I'm gonna go the other direction.
Well, I'm going to let you guys get back to fishing. But John, if anyone wants to book a charter with you and buy gear, where can they find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they get in touch?
Well, I've got a YouTube channel, and I've got a lot of videos there, a lot of instructional videos. You can go to halibut.net for some halibut information, halibutchronicles.com, salmonchronicles.com. To buy gear, you can go to squidlures.com. To charter, squidprocharters.com.
Thank you so much. And John honestly has taught me a ton. Like, I got the tip today that I've never heard before, bouncing your downrigger with your chum bag to just agitate that a little bit. Never thought of it. Great idea. And that's one of the beautiful things is you can always grab a new nugget here and there, learn something new from the people who have done it. They've been out there, they've been fishing, putting time on the water, really being willing to try new spots, new techniques, designing new gear. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and being available to share your knowledge and catch some fish for our community here.
Yeah, no problem. We made it happen in the rough water.
Any final tips or final words that you want to give anglers before we sign off?
Don't give up. Patience is your friend. Something that I don't always have patience for, you know. But when it comes to anchoring, I've got a lot of patience, but a lot of times I don't have the patience. But patience is your friend. You got to give them time to come to you. If you do the math, if you got a 1 knot current and you're anchoring and you're attracting halibut from a mile away, it's going to take at least an hour for them to get there. So you got to give it time.
Excellent advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. We'll let you get back to fishing and send me some pictures when you guys are limited out.
Thanks for inviting me. We'll see you later.
Thank you, John.